Okay, I've started recording. Right, welcome everyone to the Pearson Business Book Club. My name is Eloise Cook and I'm the publisher for the professional business lists at Pearson. So each month at the book club, we choose a Pearson business or personal development book and we invite the author on to discuss it. They'll also give a webinar on a key concept from the book. And don't forget, we are recording this, so if you need to leave halfway through, the video will be available to watch on demand at the book club website. So what's our book this month? Our book is Yes, You Can Innovate by Natalie Turner. And if you haven't got a copy yet, you can buy it through the book club web page on pearson.com. I'm going to pop the link into the chat. And don't forget, you can use the Q&A function to ask Natalie questions at the end. Right, I'll start sharing. Hello, Natalie, welcome.
Hello, Eloise. Thank you for having me here.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you. Yes, this is very exciting. I think this time of year feels like a good time for innovation.
Absolutely.
So I'll start by introducing you. You are a professional speaker, writer, and consultant who enables people to bring to life innovations that will change the world for the better. You are the inventor of the Six Eyes a model and profiling tool that helps people measure their innovation skills and mindsets. And you've just completed your first novel, a love story set in the temples of Angkor Wat. That sounds fantastic.
Absolutely, yes. A very, very different to Yes, You Can Innovate, but still required quite a degree of innovation.
Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. So how are you doing?
I'm very well. Yes, I'm now living in Lisbon after many years in Asia and enjoying it over here in Portugal.
I bet it's nicer weather than it is here today. It's very grey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's lovely. Mid-20s here.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. And quite a few of my authors have done some fiction as well. So it's an interesting sort of comparison. Yeah, if we have time, we'll have to talk about your book. So,
Yes.
so let's start with our usual question. So we ask all our authors the same three questions. So here's the first one. Why did you want to write this book?
Mm. Well, there were a number of reasons that I wrote Yes, You Can Innovate. I think the first one was I wanted to codify, if you like, and put together and pull together all of the thinking that I had around the six eyes of innovation and have it as a sort of an accessible, practical how-to guide on how to innovate, really. So that was the main driver, was to actually have it in one place and make it open to a broader public, because up until that point I'd been using a lot of the tools and the model and the systems and the profiling in government, in non-profit organizations and in corporates and startups, but for the general public, people didn't know about it. So I think it sort of gave a way to have that more in as an accessible sort of way of thinking about innovation in the broader sphere. And I think one of the other reasons, just in terms of the specific sort of content of the book, was to make this very sort of big, scary word, innovation, to make it more accessible to people and to sort of democratize innovation in a way, to help people see that they are all innovating. We are all innovating. We might not call it that because we often have the perception innovation is about research and development or new technologies and change or big things that other people are doing somewhere in labs or in scientific discovery or research. And I wanted to say, well, actually, no, we're all innovating as humans. We have to, and we always have, to survive. And so really to broaden out this concept of innovation and make a sort of a how-to guide on how to innovate and to give people some tools and approaches.
Fantastic. Yes, and I think you're right. Innovation does sound like a really scary word, but I think once you understand what sort of type of innovator you are, then hopefully it
Mm.
becomes a lot more straightforward for people.
Absolutely. And I think that is another reason too, because the six eyes, which obviously is what we're going to talk about today, helps people to understand that in being innovative is not just being creative. It's not just the creative people that come up with the ideas, that the innovators. And I think that's still a very common myth. And in fact, these days, and maybe even more so now because of the rise of artificial intelligence, the implementers are really going to be the innovators, because they're going to be the people that are very good at pulling together and managing very diverse inputs into a process to get new stuff out into the world. So that's another very core reason and core message of the whole of my philosophy around innovation.
Fantastic. Okay, next question. Was there anything that surprised you about writing this book?
I think what the actual process of writing, I really loved. So it wasn't a big surprise that I sort of took to writing. And of course, I enjoyed working with you, Eloise. That was fantastic. And having an editor sort of looking at your work and critiquing it, I think it was fantastic. I think the bigger surprise actually was once the book was published, and Pearson had managed to secure the book, Business Book of the Month in W.H. Smith's and Koina Kanoya in Singapore, that suddenly people started contacting me. It's the sort of thing that you read about, that you get an email from someone saying, "Oh, I read your book at the airport and I really like it, and I'd love to sort of explore more your model in my organization." And that was surprising to actually have that happen, and to sort of to see that it's a calling card in a way for people that you would never normally meet or have the ideas exposed to.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. And last question, how do you want readers to feel about reading your book?
I want people to go away empowered, I suppose it would be the word that I would pick. Empowered and inspired, maybe, hopefully, that people realize, well, actually, yes, I can innovate. I can do things. And maybe I haven't seen it that way before, but now I have a roadmap. I have a way to sort of navigate complexity and change. I have tools in my disposal. I know what my skill set is, and I feel a bit more ready to go for it, to have a go and not to feel so daunted about doing new things. I think that is fantastic. If people read my book and go away with that, then I'm very happy.
Fantastic. I love that. Yes, yes. Well, that's a great aim. Okay, time for your session. So we've got the 6 keys to unlock the innovative power potential of teams. So don't forget, if anyone wants to ask Natalie a question, you can pop it in the Q&A, and we'll get to those at the end. Yes, I'll take it away, Natalie.
Thanks. So can you see my screen okay, Eloise?
Yes, yes, looks good.
Perfect, perfect. All right, well, welcome everybody to this this session. Very excited to be here and to be sharing the message of yes, you can innovate with you. If you're feeling brave and fancy, just popping in the chat where you are zooming in from, who you are, then please do. It's always nice to know who's actually at the other end of the camera. So, yes, you can innovate. What are we going to be doing today? We are going to be looking at a very people-centered approach to innovation. And I can see, lots of people are very happy to be putting in the chat, so that's fantastic. All over the world, obviously some people here in Portugal, the UK, the US, and Colorado, wonderful. Chicago, Minneapolis, Brazil, Oregon. Welcome, everyone. Well, it's good that we're talking about people, because you are all people. And no matter how complex and challenging our times are, at the end of the day, it's still about us ultimately trying to make things work, and particularly trying to make new things work. So this is very much a people-centered approach to innovation. And I'd love it if you've got a pen and paper to hand or something to write on, please grab it now, because I will be asking you a few questions as we go through the presentation, for you to sort of ponder on yourself, and to also think about any ideas that might be emerging for you that you want to talk about. Now, if we put ourselves always in a context, it's very rarely that we are a lone ranger. You know, even if we are running our own business or we are a freelancer or an entrepreneur, we're still having to do things with people. And so in a team environment or an outsourcing environment, we are working, we're building culture, we might be leading teams, we've got different ways of managing, we've got value systems, we've got a lot of different things going on that are very much about humans. They're about us doing things within a context. So when I invented the model, which is what I'm going to take you through today, the 6 I's of innovation, I call it a people and a purpose-centered approach to doing new things. Now, the word innovation, for me, if we sort of broaden it out, innovation means creating something of value out of an idea that is new to you. It doesn't have to be new to the world. Very few things are new to the world. Often things are combinations of, but new to you. So you're bringing something new into the world that is a new idea for you. But it's also about value creation, that you're having an impact with that idea. So that's why I said earlier to Eloise that it's a lot more than just having a creative idea or a thought. And in fact, we all have loads of ideas, and probably a lot of them we don't even ever take forward. So it's important for us to understand that there are lots of different stages to innovation. And we've got these 6 different stages. And for people in teams, we tend to have one of these I's more stronger in our own skill set. So what I'm going to be doing today is to take you through each of the 6 I's, and for you to have a think about yourself and unpack it a little bit more and think about, if you're working with other people that are strong in that particular skill set, how can you encourage them to be more innovative? And if you see yourself as strong in that skill set, how can you encourage yourself? How can you get better at what you're already better at? Now, the other aspect around this as well is about us thinking about the purpose of what we're trying to create. We know nowadays, particularly having sustainability at the heart of what we're trying to bring into the world is very, very important. And humans obviously are still having to make those decisions. We don't just want any old innovation. We want things to have a positive impact. So that's why I say it's a purpose-centered approach. What is it we're trying to do and why? And if we think of that as the anchor point of everything that we do, and it's in the center of all our thinking, it can help us. It can be that guiding light as we're going on the journey. Now, we also have these 2 little triangles that link purpose to each of the I's. And these are very important, particularly when you're working in teams and with other people. And even if you're working on your own, the inner one, the inner triangle, is all about culture. It's about the environment that you have to stimulate that particular phase of the innovation journey. And the outer one is processes. So they would be things that you might put in place to help you to codify, to gather your thoughts. So for example, for Ignite, I have a lovely writing room in my home in Lisbon, and it helps to stimulate my environment. It's separate to my other working environment, so I'm very lucky, and I have beautiful things around me that can help to stimulate my imagination. And then the processes around Ignite. A process could be journaling, for example. I love to journal as a writer and have a little book. I like a proper pen and paper to write with, and that helps to sort of spring new ideas into my mind. Now, for implement, for example, you're going to have maybe very different processes. You'll need ways of managing your ideas, and you'll need a different cultural environment that helps to stimulate action and implementation. So for each of the phases of the journey that we might go on, we've got these different elements that are very important. So let's look at the book then, and we'll dive into each of these 6 I's. Now, as I said right at the beginning, people are what is really, really important. And so what I wanted to do when I wrote the book was to have real people interviewed, not just sort of caricatures or famous people. You say, oh, Warren Buffett is a great investor, or people that are sort of far away from our own experience. So each of the people that I interviewed represents one of the eyes, and they actually come up high on the eye, on the particular profile that I have invented. And so we'll meet these different people as we go through. So let's start then with identify, and I'm in my identify blue here today. I like to wear different colors depending on what I'm actually trying to be working on, and at the moment I'm working on identifying new opportunities. So it's nice to have the color represented of what you're trying to do. So when we think of blue, we can often think of blue sky thinking. We can think of blue ocean strategy, big expanses of space, looking up into the sky. If you think of somebody at the top of a mountain or looking out with binoculars, they're seeing, well, what is emerging for us? And obviously right now, we have a lot of new opportunities emerging. So what mindset do we need? We need the mindset of curiosity, that mindset that spins inside of our thinking, and it's looking for different types of opportunities. So you can see here, I have it represented with a swirl of energy. And we need lots of curiosity because that helps us to ask questions. Have a think about yourself. Think about how curious you are. So what is the role of the identifier for people that are very strong in this skill set? So this stage is all about spotting new opportunities, seeing new spaces for new ideas to emerge. So the people that are really good at this phase of innovation, they're very good at providing vision, direction, a sense of the new, and they tend to be very curious people. And the person that I interviewed for the book was Ricky Teo, and he is an area manager in Singapore, looking at across 8 different markets in South Asia for Leo Pharma Asia. So spotting different types of opportunities that the different countries might be able to leverage, might be able to exploit in terms of learning and optimizing what they're trying to do in pharmaceuticals. So we need lots of identifiers because they're the people that will be looking out ahead. Now, if you're working with people in a team, because this is obviously about how we can unlock the team and get other people to be good at certain things as well, then some of the do's and don'ts, and I outline these in the book too, is give people time to explore emerging trends that are orientated towards the future. People who are good at identifying like thinking. They normally like reading and questioning and pondering about things, and particularly new things that might be emerging, and stimulate their imagination with grand vision and plans, really about these new things that could be coming up. Now, some of the things not to do is don't involve them in work that is so focused on maintenance of existing processes and systems. Why? Because they get very, very bored. They get very, very bored and will tend to sort of lose engagement, and you won't get the best out of them. So don't limit their work to the sphere of the ordinary. They like to be thinking about the new and what new might be emerging right now. Now, a toolkit that is very useful for this stage of innovation is the 3 horizons. The 3 horizons is, things that you're doing right now in front of you, things that are maybe emerging around the edges of what you're doing, and things that are really going to disrupt your working space or your industry or the things that you're doing at work. And Marianne says, that's me, like the sound of it. That's great, Marianne. Yes, I'm quite high on the identifier as well. Probably one reason why I invented this model. So the 3 horizons is a great tool to learn. If you haven't come across it, do Google it or have a look in the book. I've got some information around it as well to help them to be thinking about the future and how to look for new opportunities. So, as I said at the beginning, I want to ask you a few questions as we go through. So, think about your current work. Where is there an opportunity to do something new? There must be an opportunity. You know, if you spend a few minutes just pondering about this, and then what one thing could you do to increase your personal curiosity? How can you sort of stimulate your mind to think a little bit differently? I think we all know that right now there are so many different new tools and things out there that we can learn to help to stimulate a different way of thinking. So just have a think about that for a moment, and the identify phase of innovation, and any identifiers you might work with, or even if you yourself, like Marianne, are an identifier. Okay, now let's look at Ignite. Now, Ignite, I give the color red. Red's a very strong color. It's a very passionate color. If you think of lighting a match, igniting the car, you're getting something going. It's where you get that spark of an idea, a spark of inspiration, that something pops in your head and you think, aha, yes, that aha moment. And these ideas can come from all sorts of places. But now it's interestingly, and I said to Eloise at the beginning, you know, one of the reasons I wrote the book was I wanted to broaden the concept out of what it means to be innovative. Now, igniters are often what people consider the innovative people, you know, the creative types of people. But as you will see, that it's only one particular skill set required to be successful at innovating. A very important one, because this is where we have creativity. And with creativity, we have novelty, we have new ideas coming forward. So we need that swirl of creative energy. And you can see the swirl here. Having lived in Asia a long time, some of my Asian clients would say, oh, it looks like a Chinese dragon. So there you go. That sort of that sphere of lots of energy, lots of movement, lots of dynamic things moving around in your mind. Now, the person that I interviewed for the book was Marco Brabec, and at the time he was working with Cisco Systems, and he is a great igniter. Not only was he good at getting ideas himself, he was very good at inspiring his team and enabling his team to be igniters and for them to come up ideas. So the role of the igniter in the phase and the journey of innovation is about novelty, freshness, new energy, new inspiration for those new possibilities, particularly, hopefully, that you've identified in the identify stage. And they bring that mindset of creativity. Now, if you are working with igniters, have a think. Do you know any? Are you one yourself? You know, encourage igniters to talk about lots of different ideas, concepts, solutions. That is what they really enjoy. They enjoy brainstorming. They enjoy bouncing ideas around. They enjoy talking about possibilities and opportunities to solve problems and challenges and coming up with ideas that hopefully will address those challenges. What they don't like so much is when you pour cold water all over their ideas, or you'll be very dismissive of them, or say that they're never going to work, or you're not going to build on them. So don't be dismissive, and don't ask them to fulfill too much routine work. Again, like the identifier, they do tend to get quite bored quite easily, and like lots of variety in their work. So think about yourself. Are you an igniter? Think about your team, your colleagues, people that you might know or work with. You want to get the best out of them. And as I said right at the beginning, we don't work in a vacuum. We're always in a context. And you can even hire the most creative people, but if your culture doesn't really support creativity, then a lot of their creativity won't come out because it gets squashed. So it's very important that we have these environments that stimulate each of these eyes to come forward. Now, one of the tools that is useful for Ignite is stimulus. Stimulus can be anything, actually. It's just something that's not in your direct line of vision of what you're thinking about at that time. So, one example that I like to use a lot in the work that I do and we do with clients is when you take another brand and you say, from the perspective of this company, what would they do? How would they approach this problem? How would they approach this challenge? And of course, now with generative AI, a super duper idea generator. I mean, we have such a tool at our disposal now to really be able to generate ideas and thinking, and to have a sparring and creative thinking partner. Actually, AI, and I think we could do a whole webinar just on innovation and AI and the 6 I's on its own. You know, it really can help right across each of the I's. Maybe not the very personal aspect of bringing the idea into the world, depending on what it is around implementation, but all the other I's, it can absolutely help you to become a sharper innovator. So a question for you, a couple of questions. Think of the opportunity you have identified. What ideas are emerging for you about how you could do something differently? And what one thing could you do to increase your personal creativity? What one thing could you do to do that? And think around that, because that will then help you to stimulate your own creative thinking. And in the book, I have lots of tips and tools on how you can do that, how you can increase your mindset around that. Okay, let's move on to investigate. I give the color teal blue or turquoise. It's more of a calm color, an objective color, very different to identify and ignite. This is when we really need to be dispassionate. We need to be able to stand back from ideas. We need to look at them with a different mindset, the critical mindset. And the critical mindset, here you can see the swirls are less sort of moving around in a type of energy. They're more precise. They're cutting through like a knife, because you've got to be able to stand back and say, will this idea work? Or how can it work? How can I test this idea? How, you know, what could go wrong with it? You know, is it going to be useful and not just novel? And that requires a very, very different way of thinking to curiosity and creativity. Now, the investigator role or the profile, the person that I interviewed was Jackie, who worked at Facebook at the time in Singapore. I believe now she's in the US, working in Silicon Valley. But she was responsible for looking at campaigns and campaign management globally, particularly a lot of, obviously, the data side of it, but also stakeholder engagement, working with people, helping new things to be tested to see if they're going to really work. So the role of the investigator, and think about yourself, are you one? They are very good at providing analytical thinking, objective thinking. They're good at researching and testing and taking things apart with that very critical mindset. So if you are working with investigators, do encourage them to test ideas, to get out there, to talk to people, to test with stakeholders or customers, whoever that might be involved in refining the ideas, and present your ideas in a systematic way and invite their critical thinking. This is when you want to bring in that critical mindset, because it will help to hone the ideas rather than just jumping straight in off the cliff with your idea without thinking it through. Because it'll save you a lot of time and heartache if you've at least thought through some of the things that might go wrong as well. Don't jump into action without finding out whether an idea meets a need, a customer need, a market need, whoever you're trying to innovate for. And don't be overly attached to an idea just because you created it, or it be haphazard or lack logic. I see this happen a lot, particularly with igniters, because they get very excited about their own ideas and want to just go ahead with it. But actually, it's very good if they're not high on investigate to bring in the investigators, because they can really help to think things through. A toolkit, a tool that is really good for this stage of the journey, prototyping. Prototyping, when we create a mock-up a sort of simulation of something. So it's not, you're not investing loads of time and money into getting something off the ground, but you're really just sort of doing a mock-up to see and to test whether the idea might work and to see people's reactions. And with all the data-driven prototyping we can do now online, we can do this very quickly, very simply to get input into our ideas. So some questions for you then. Think about your idea. Could you test it? How can you test your ideas to make sure that they are useful, not just novel? And what one thing could you do to develop more critical thinking? To take that step back. It's interesting for me, investigate is one of my lowest in my profile, in my skill set. I tend to be higher on identify and ignite and implement. But I am very, very aware of that. And as a very good coach of mine said to me once, she said, Natalie, insert the pause button. And I always remember that because I just tend to like to jump on in after I've had an idea. And she said, insert the pause button. So that is one way to even help a little bit of critical thinking. Pause, reflect before you jump. Okay, now we have invest. The color green is what I've given the invest. Green, we often think of green light, go. We think of money or growth, all of those sorts of areas. So that's the reason that I've given it the color green. And it's that phase of innovation when we make decisions. Are we going to back our ideas? Is it yes? Is it no? Is it maybe? Whatever decision you make is a decision, even if you don't make a decision. So this really requires a very different skill set and mindset to the three we've already looked at. And the person that I interviewed actually in the book was Thomas, and Thomas at the time was an investor, financial investor into fintech, financial technology companies. He now works for a big bank, I believe, in Singapore, doing similar types of things, but more around acquisitions of new technology for the bank. But they have a very different types of skill set: pragmatism, decision-making, influence, taking things apart to see whether or not things will really work, will be really viable. But at the end of the day, you have to have courage. If you have no courage, you won't do anything new. You'll just stay swirling around in identify and ignite and investigate without getting any traction. And you have to be able to step out to make things new. I often call, very sadly, because I see this is one of the hardest areas for a lot of people in organizations, that this is the graveyard of ideas. This is sadly where our ideas will often die. Lack of resource, lack of funding, lack of know-how, lack of knowledge, lack of experience, all the things that might be required don't quite come off the ground to get something out there in the world. So it's a very, very important skill set, and often we don't think about it enough. Courageous, as we say, we need that mindset of courage. So when you are working with people who are investors, be down to earth and pragmatic. Be realistic with your goals. Go with something really thought through. You don't necessarily have to be like Oliver Twist, the story Oliver Twist, where you're going up and you're saying, please, sir, can I have some more? Involve your investors earlier on. Involve your investors in the stages when you're even igniting ideas, and you can get them even to be starting to help you question things to see if they're really going to work. Also, demonstrate how your idea is going to fulfill an unmet customer or market need. Don't overinflate assumptions or have unrealistic expectations. So that could often happen a lot. Particularly with very new ideas that aren't well thought through. And don't have vague propositions that are not tested out. At least try to get some time to test things in your investigate phase, and then in invest when you're really starting to put a bit of resource behind something to make it happen. Now, this doesn't always have to be big, grand plans and projects. It can be, but this could be small things you're working on in your daily job. You know, you might need to say, okay, well, what am I going to do the next hour of my day? You know, what do I need to, you know, have courage to maybe set aside in terms of my time? How am I going to use the resource of myself? So don't always think that it has to be big, grand plans. It can be small things as well. And yeah, Doug says, good time for a pre-mortem. Very much so. And Carl says, I need to use the pause button a bit more. Absolutely, Carl. I agree there. And excellent. Good. Okay, so pitching is the toolkit that we need very much in this phase of innovation. And it's interesting, we often think of innovation skills being creativity skills. Well, in fact, actually, I think more and more it will be our ability to persuade, to influence, to get people to back us, to be able to tell stories, to get people excited about ideas. It's going to be our communication skills that are very, very important. And that is a skill that we can develop with lots of, you know, inputs and training and tools to help us get better at being great communicators. So some questions for you around invest. Think of your idea. Who might you need to persuade to help you back your idea, to get involved in your idea somehow? And what one small step could you take to develop more courage, to step out of your comfort zone, to do something different? That's really, really important, to just push your edge, push your evolving edge, and you will, you know, your heart will beat harder, you'll perspire more, you'll have that feeling of anxiety and fear. But then when you have a go and you actually see yourself do something new and you think, wow, I did that, I tried it, even if it doesn't always work out, but to have that attitude of courage is very, very important. All right, let's move on to implement. Implement, I give the color purple. The color purple, historically one of the hardest colors to make. And I think this is the hardest phase of a journey of an idea. This is when we have to make our ideas happen. And so we need the committed mindset. And you can see here the swells are going in on themselves. They're having to sort of say, right, I've got to stick with this. I've got to be resilient. I've got to make it happen. I've got to get all the things that I need to make the idea happen. So we need that committed mindset. Now, the implementer profile, I interviewed a lady called Christine for the book. You'll meet her in the book if you read it. And she is a tenacious lady that has done many, many things throughout her career. When I interviewed her at the time of writing, she had created a club called the Entree Club, which matchmaked people that were more like investors and people that had been successful entrepreneurs doing successful exits of their own companies with new up and coming people that wanted to learn. And it was a matchmaking type service, but very much about bringing the things that are required to make the idea work. So here we need management, focus, discipline. Can you see how different these eyes are? These are where it says we need lots of action here. We need people to get things done. Now, it's interesting. I've taken this all over the world, and everywhere I go, I have implementers come up to me afterwards and say, I never thought I was innovative. I thought I was an innovative person. I just got stuff done. And they are like smiling and they're so happy that they see themselves that way, because we need everybody. We need diversity to make our ideas work, and we can't always be good at everything, and nor should we be. So be action orientated and focused on results, stick to deadlines, have realistic plans, but communicate, because you're going to deviate off that plan continuously. You always need to know where you're going, at least one step ahead, but that step's going to change, or 2 or 3 steps ahead is going to change, particularly when you're doing new things. And if you have not done this before, because you haven't got the experience to fall back on, and that is why innovation can be challenging. You might not know exactly what you're doing. You're learning as you're going along. So it's very important that you have a plan that is an agile plan, a plan that can adapt to change. Don't jump into new activities without finishing what you're working on. That can infuriate implementers. You know, get things done, stick with it, and then move on. Don't continuously change your mind without involving them in the decision making and getting their buy-in. I think a lot of implementers get quite fed up because a lot of stuff lands on their desk. Oh, can you do this? Could you do that? Can you execute on this? Can you authorize this? Can you make this happen? Without really being involved oftentimes in the whole of the journey of the process of innovation. So if you're actually starting something as a team, get together all the different types of people you're going to need right at the beginning, because you'll have such greater efficiency and productivity. Plus, you'll have all the different viewpoints and perspectives coming in, and you'll know how to manage them, because you're not going to be just trying to get loads of igniters together. You're never actually going to get anything off the ground. So it's very important to be able to manage the diverse types of skill sets. A toolkit for implement is good old action planning. You know, write down, what are we doing? Who's doing what? What are our roles and our responsibilities? When are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? How are we going to measure our success? You know, to have a proper plan of action, as I say, that you know when you're moving away from, and you know why you're moving away from it and what you're moving to. But you still got to have a plan. Without a plan, you're just going to fumble around in the dark. So it's very, very important to be having this toolkit and developing people's abilities to be great planners and organizers. Now, some questions for you around implementation. What next step, even the little baby step, might you need to do to move your idea forward from a concept, from something written on paper, to something in the world, in existence? It doesn't have to be the whole thing. It's just one thing that you know, actually, now I've moved this forward. I'm on the way. I'm on the journey into bringing the idea to life. And what one thing could you do to increase your ability to be more committed, more resilient, to see things through? Now, lastly, we have improve, which I give the color orange. Orange, we think of vibrancy, glow, think of the fire, think of the warmth around it. This is when we have ideas to improve what we already have. We're sitting on lots and lots of stuff. And if only we could look at it differently and think, how can I improve it? So we need the clever mindset. And you can see the swirl of energy is starting to open up again, because the mind has to open. It has to start to see. It has to start to see differently. Now, the role of the improver, and the person I interviewed for the book was Rose. And Rose was an innovation manager, actually, at a aged care company in Australia. I'm very, very good at looking at all the different sites to see how improvements could be made across the different sites. And the improver, what they really bring to the journey is fresh perspectives, the ability to learn, to review, to optimize what you already have with that clever mindset. So if you are working with the improvers, talk about improvement, learning, optimization of what you already have, and involve them in getting lots of feedback. Build that learning organization, build on those feedback loops. Get those inputs from people who are engaging with what you have, with what you're working on. Don't forget to review or assess or see new possibilities for what already exists. I see that a lot of people do forget about improved. They tend to jump on into the next thing that's coming along. And I think we do miss out on a lot of opportunities for making new things happen a lot faster with what we already have. So don't rush into the next thing without thinking about how you can improve what you've already got. Now, a toolkit that's very useful for this is an after-action review. And an after-action review is something where you question what was supposed to happen, what happened, why, and what did I learn? Yeah. What was supposed to happen? What happened? Why did it happen? And what did I learn? That's an after action review. And that's very useful because if you start to review, you start to learn. And then when you learn, you optimize. And we have to be learning constantly in order to help us be better at getting our ideas out into the world. So some questions for you. Think of your ideas. How could you improve your ideas? What you're already sitting on, what you already know, what you already have in your environment. And what one thing could you do to create a more clever mindset, to optimize the value that you have already created? Is there a way that you could take something and do something different with it? So here we have the 6 eyes. I've taken a whistle-stop tour through them, but this is the logo of the 6 eyes. What can you see? You can put in the chat if you like. What can you see of this logo? Any responses? What can you see? Hopefully, you can see they're all going together in the same direction. Fantastic, Jane. Yes, they are dynamically aligned. They are different, but they are together. Diversity is the lifeblood of innovation. Absolutely, Renan. You took the words out of my mouth. Diversity. Very, very key. Very hard to do well. To have diverse viewpoints, perspectives, skills, mindsets working together in harmony and balance. But that is the philosophy of the 6 eyes. And you can see on the outside, you have the identify blue, always looking out what's happening next, what's coming up on our peripheral vision, where do we need to be looking, and calling the others to say, hey guys, this is changing. We need to be looking over here. But we need to have that dynamic approach of the 6 skill sets, mindsets, and ways of seeing working together in a 6. So hopefully you see the number 6. Some people don't see the number 6, but there it is. Centered around purpose. Why are we doing what we are doing? We all know sustainability is at the core of everything now. It's so urgent in all of our work, and it has to be driving our decision making. Very, very critical to helping us to achieve and to tackle some of the most complex, big issues of our time and some of the things that we're working on in our day-to-day. So just before we have a poll, I just want to show you a couple of the profiles, just to show you what we have developed out of this and what you get as part of the book. So when you purchase the book, what we have included is a profile, which just gives you a top line of your innovation strengths. So this is actually my strengths here. So you can go online, you put up your proof of purchase, you can do a book profile. So you can see here that I consider myself high on identify and ignite and implement, lower on investigate and improve. So I'm aware of myself there. I'm aware of what I contribute. I'm aware of where I need other people's support. Now, in our other versions, which we use with clients and on projects and teams, we also measure importance scores, and that's shown by the lighter bar here. So you can measure what's most important to you in your work right now. And therefore, what do you do about that? Do you have to learn everything yourself? No, not necessarily. You might have to if it's just you on your own. But no, collaborate, because that's the only way of getting things done. Then what we can do is measure your top strengths across each of the eyes and dive deeper into each of the skill sets that make up each of the eyes, which gives you a sense of what you are strong at in each of the concepts, what's important to you, where your professional development might need to be focused. And that's really useful for leadership, for team development. So for the book, you just get the top left-hand corner chart, and then obviously for the other ones, that's more when we're working on projects with individuals, whether it's coaching or teams or working on projects. We can also then aggregate people's results into teams, and we can see this team sees themselves high on identify and low on implement. So what's going to happen there? And we can help them coach how they're going to make sure they don't just stay up in the land of ideas and concepts, and they need to be able to move them forward. We can see a snapshot of different people's eyes across for a team, and this helps to give a sense of where people's strengths might lie, and then dive deep into the model and the data and give people a lot more information to work with at a team level. Very good for strategic work, for team development. So all of this we have been improving and developing over the last 16 years since we started to develop the 6 I's of innovation. So what we're going to do now is we are going to have a poll. And what I want you to be thinking about is, which I do you most identify with? Which one do you consider your top strength? Do you see yourself as the identifier, the curious one? Do you see yourself as the igniter, the creative one? Do you see yourself as the investigator, the critical one? The investor, the courageous one? The implementer, the committed one? Or the improver, the clever one? So let's just see what results we get. And always interesting to see. Now, as you have seen from the profile, nobody on our model comes up just one eye. We're always a blend because we all have experience. This is a skills-based assessment. It's not a personality or a psychological instrument. It's what you consider yourself to be good at as it relates to skills. So that's very, very important to remember. But obviously for the poll, we just want you to pull out which one you consider is most your top one. So let's have a look at the results. All right. So we have 30% of the room considering themselves to be the creative igniters. And so that is the highest one, followed by the curious identifiers. So a bit like my profile here. Now, what is the lowest one? It's very interesting. The lowest one is the graveyard of ideas, the courageous investors. And I see this everywhere I go, where they're doing this poll. This one tends to come up the lowest. So we do have an issue there, because without courageous investment, we don't get our ideas off the ground. Things just stay in the land of concepts. All right, so that is the lowest one, and the improver after that. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is to think about your challenges. What is your biggest challenge? Your biggest challenge. What would you like to develop? Where do you need support? So have a vote on that. Is it around the identifier, igniter, investigator, investor, implementer, or improver? What is your biggest challenge? You saw my biggest challenge is around improve and investigate. I tend to be too impatient. I want to just get on with things. And I have to work well with other people that are good at that. And can you imagine just how much investigation went into developing a model like the 6 I's of innovation? And thankfully, I had a brilliant statistician to work with to really develop it up as a model. But yes, let's see now. What is the top one then? The top one is, the biggest challenge is, well, in a sense, not surprisingly, the courageous investors. The courageous investor is the biggest one with 26%, followed by implement and improve. So have a think about yourself and your skill set around that. If you do get the book, you do get, as I say, you get the cut down version of the book profile, so you can actually see what your strengths are. All right, thank you for putting up the poll. So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to end, and then we'll have some questions. Now, it's interesting, obviously, we were talking a little bit about artificial intelligence, and I think this is one of our big differentiators anyway, for now, at least, because things are rapidly changing. You know, we know that machines can be programmed to do the next thing right. And with artificial intelligence out there is pretty awesome. You really need to be on top of it, and we need to be very, very skilled at how we learn how to use all these different language models. But only humans can do the next right thing. Yeah, the next right thing. Ethics, responsibility, purpose, sustainability, the choices that we make with what we invent and what we create is absolutely important and fundamental for us as innovators, for us trying to do new things. So I'd like to thank everybody for being here on this webinar. Do reach out to me if you're interested to know more. Link in with me on LinkedIn. You can use that QR code. Yeah, feel free. And here is my contact details as well. The book is there at the end. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. That was fantastic. Gosh, so much information, but that's been really useful, and hopefully people will be inspired to find out more. We should have time for a couple of questions. If anyone's got any, just pop them in the Q&A or the chat. Here's one for you, Natalie. Do you use design thinking and ideation in your innovative process?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's core to the innovation process. And actually, I used to be a design thinking facilitator for many years prior to actually setting up and creating the 6 I's of innovation. And one of the reasons I created the 6 I's was I saw that design thinking wasn't enough, actually. Design thinking will cover particularly the first 3 I's: identify, ignite, and investigate. But those other elements, it doesn't really cover off. And we can do some great design thinking work. We can have all the customer human-centered design ideas in the world, but actually not get them out into the world and drive them out there, and not raise the investment required, and not have great implementers. So that was actually one of the reasons that I invented the 6 I's, was to combine, and I'll just stop sharing now, to combine design thinking with organizational and team development, because it's the combination of the two really that enable us to innovate successfully.
Fantastic. Here's another one. Is there a perfect innovation team?
That's well, I would say there's no such thing as a perfect team, but there is a team fit for purpose. I think what we have to think about is, why are we assembling as a team? You know, what is our purpose? Why have we been brought together? Now, if you'll say your purpose is to generate ideas without any constraint and nobody criticizing you at all, and no limitation, then you might want a team of igniters to just have a great old sparring time. But if your purpose is to say, get something out into the world in the next, month or 6 weeks or whatever it might be, it'd be probably best to have a good diverse team that's really going to be thinking through all the different angles and elements, so that you can make that idea far more feasible, rather than just have loads of ideas flying around. So I would say, think about what it is you're trying to achieve, what's your purpose, and who are you working with, and then think about the types of people that you might need to be able to make that idea or the process work.
Fantastic. Okay, last question, I think. As a creator / implementer, how could I use AI to make work for my benefits? So how could I use AI to make for my benefit, I think?
Yeah, well, I think, there are lots of different language models out there now that we can use. I think for I use ChatGPT-4. That's the model that I use, and I use it every day to help me across all my ideas and what I'm thinking. I think the big skill we really need, whether it's implementation or creative thinking, when it comes to AI, is our ability to prompt the artificial intelligence to actually come up with the right phrasing. Because I think the output then is the quality of what you will get out is going to be largely dependent on the questions that you pose. So the more context you give, even if you give examples, or you say, you put the artificial intelligence into the first person, if you like, and say, you are this, how would you go about it? Then I think that can really help both with creative ideas, but also with implementation ideas. Because, a lot of the time, and I think this is also where, we're going to, the human element, if you like, working in tandem with artificial intelligence is so important, because in the implementation aspect, we're going to be having to manage complex different language models. And I read a great article recently. It's called "We're Moving from the Information Economy and the Knowledge Economy to the Allocation Economy." And the skill set is going to be, how good are you at managing diverse inputs from both human and artificial knowledge to create things and then bring it all together and to implement. So I would just say, play with the models, have a go. See, use different types of querying and prompting to see what types of inputs and outputs that you can generate, to see how it's helping you in your day-to-day work.
Fab. Great. Well, thank you so much, Natalie. That was really useful, and I hope people will sort of look you up on your website and on social media. I'll just share my screen briefly. Thank you to everyone for attending, and I hope that you'll join us again next month. Our business book of the month in May, crikey, May, is Speak Out, Listen Up by Megan Rates and John Higgins. And their webinar is on psychological safety, how better, not smoother conversations can deliver at work. So hopefully we'll see you again for that one. So yes, thank you everyone, and see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.